Who is Adrian Zenz? What makes him an expert on China? Adrian Zenz is a German anthropologist and well known as a notorious figure in the international community. Zenz recently attracted attention from the Chinese media over his so-called Xinjiang police files. This was nothing more than hyped propaganda by the self-proclaimed anti-China academic. This video will offer an insight into the religious beliefs of Adrian Zenz, as well as debunk his anti-China claims as nothing more than poor quality propaganda. Hi, I am John, and welcome to my channel, Lao Wai in China. On this channel, my aim is to inform people that have never visited China what life here is really like, and not as it is often portrayed in Western media. I cover topics such as travel, culture, as well as current affairs, both here and overseas, that reflect the day-to-day life here. Today's video is called Who is Adrian Zenz? What makes him an expert on China? I hope you like this video, so sit back and enjoy. Elijan Anayat, a regional government spokesperson for Xinjiang, stated in a recent press conference in Beijing that this latest report by Zenz was nothing more than assumption based on speculation and fiction. The far right-backed group, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, and under the backing of the US government, fund the Xinjiang-related reports written by Zenz, who himself claims he was led by God in undertaking his anti-China stance. Anayat further added that the vicious determination of Zenz to spread his lies about Xinjiang were nothing more than his, Zenz, attempts to stir up problems in the region. The foundation to which Zenz is a member is a harbour for neo-Nazis, fascists and anti-Semitic extremists from more than 20 countries, Anayat added. The spokesperson then added that the Xinjiang police files are full of misinformation, none of which stands up to factual examination. An example of which was the files contain a photo wall that contains 2,884 people who have been arbitrarily detained, claiming these 2,884 were innocent victims, but the reality is that the overwhelming majority of the people featured in the photo wall were living their lives normally. Adrian Zenz is a member of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Now, I ask myself, how is Adrian Zenz, a German citizen, a victim of communism? He comes from what was once West Germany, not the East, which found itself under communism until the late 1980s, and being born in 1974, he is hardly of an age to have witnessed communism in his country. A little into his background. The earliest references I can find to his education was that Adrian Zenz was educated at a Christian missionary school in Korntal, Germany, in the state of Baden-Württemberg, and nowhere near the once communist East Germany. So I ask again, how is Adrian Zenz a victim of communism? He does, for a Chinese expert, however, not read a word of Chinese. He once visited Xinjiang on a tourist visa for a 3-week visit in 2007 and relies on translations of his material from unquoted sources. None of this material is checked for authenticity by his employers at the US-funded think tank, and apparently this background makes him an expert on China. Why? On what grounds is he an expert? Adrian Zenz is a lecturer at the European School of Culture and Theology, the German base of the Columbia International University, a US-based evangelical Christian seminary which considers the Bible to be the ultimate foundation and the final truth in every aspect of our lives. Another aspect of the fictional world of Adrian Zenz is the impressive sounding Columbia International University. This has led to some confusion, as this educational institute is not in any way related to the world-famous Columbia University. There is no connection between the two. Zenz was quoted in an interview with the Wall Street Journal as stating, "I feel very clearly led by God to do this," this being his mission against China. So heavenly guidance has prompted Zenz to speak out against what he conceives is occurring in China. Zenz has also denounced homosexuality, gender equality, and the banning of physical punishment against children as threats to Christianity. Zenz co-authored a book in 2012 titled "Worthy to Escape: Why All Believers Will Not Be Raptured Before the Tribulation," which was full of controversial quotes such as, "Through notions of gender equality, the enemy is undermining God's unique but different role assignments for men and women." Another important God-given authority structure that Satan is attacking through the postmodern spirit is that of gender authority structures. True scriptural spanking is loving discipline. Countries are banning all forms of physical punishment of children, the primary scriptural method for installing respect. It is very likely that the global persecution of true believers will center on the charge that they promote intolerant views, especially related to preaching against homosexuality. Anti-discrimination laws put in place throughout the European Union forbid employers to discriminate based on gender or sexual orientation. That way, it becomes illegal for churches or Christian organizations to refuse to hire homosexuals into important positions. And possibly his most controversial quote was that God's refining process will wipe out all unbelieving Jews. This quote alone raises questions as to Zenz having probable anti-Semitic views. This can be further examined with a tweet made by Zenz in September 2019, in which he claimed, "Many Germans liked Hitler's control mechanisms. They reduced crime and rid society of unpopular minorities." This was in response to a question Zenz was asked, were Germany's concentration camps an overreaction to a real problem? With his strong extremist religious views, possibly someone in the US think tank that employs Zenz should be asking the question of whether or not Adrian Zenz is an appropriate face to offer opinions on China, Xinjiang, the Uyghurs, and elsewhere. Organizations with less bias against China are fighting back and using research to quash the claims made by Adrian Zenz, and in doing so are exposing the amateurish methods and ulterior motives of Adrian Zenz. One of his most reported claims was that up to 1.5 million Uyghurs were interned in concentration camps. This absurd claim was after a Uyghur separatist group were interviewed, asking them how many people from their village were, according to them, being held in such centers. The number of people interviewed for this essential piece of his report was 8. That is right, just 8 people. From that report, Zenz calculated that 1.5 million people were therefore detained across the whole of Xinjiang, and offered this as an unquestionable fact. Facts gained through sheer speculation, nothing else. Zenz has also shifted his attention to Tibet, the autonomous region in the south of China, claiming similar events to Xinjiang are occurring in Tibet. Tibetans, he claims, are being arrested en masse and taken to concentration camps where they are forced to work without pay, where their culture is suppressed and they are not permitted to speak their own traditional language. Nobody has been able to confirm these absurd claims, most probably because they are without facts. The truth of what is happening in Tibet is that in the program to eradicate poverty in China, a system that has been in place for a few decades, populations in less developed areas are given the opportunity to learn new skills such as working machinery in manufacturing jobs, opportunities that pay considerably more, as these people are taken out of poverty through learning new skills and finding better opportunities within the labour market. The money these people earn gives them a chance to send some of their salary back to their families. Facts like these, with a little research, are easily checked, but not as sensationalist as that reported as fact by Adrian Zenz. Earlier in this video, I briefly mentioned the Christian beliefs of Adrian Zenz. Let us take a look at those beliefs in a little more detail now. Adrian Zenz is an individual with some extremely questionable personal opinions. Some of his views are pushing the legal boundaries in some countries. Although some people may say that I cannot criticize or challenge the personal views of this individual, the extreme nature of his beliefs are, in my opinion, enough to challenge the extremity of those beliefs and therefore question the accuracy of his work. After all, the mainstream media repeatedly go to him for his expertise on China, yet he would never be considered for this role except that he offers such a strong anti-China stance. While a person's religious affiliation does not discredit one, Adrian Zenz, in his stance as a fundamentalist Christian, does place him on the extreme right of the evangelical wing, which actually borders on the fringes of lunacy, possibly even hysterical in nature. Yet this right-wing religious fundamentalist is being encouraged by his employers at an American think tank to foment and spew out his narrative concerning China. Yet he offers very little publicly on his actual beliefs that you have to dig a little deeper. The digging for the beliefs of Adrian Zenz does not take too long. Most of his extremist views can be found in his book, which he co-authored with Marlon Al-Sayas in 2012, of which was mentioned earlier in this video, the text of which is accessible on Google Play Books. One quote from that book I would like to share that highlights his religious thoughts is that all other belief systems to Christianity are ultimately inspired by Satan, and that those who reject the faith in Jesus will be sentenced to eternal punishment. So Zenz is claiming any religious belief system that differs from Christianity derive from Satan, and if you don't agree, you're heading directly to hell. So, not very Christian in his beliefs then. Should anyone object to this belief is intolerant to his version of Christianity. Zenz also has his own professed views on homosexuality, which frankly verge on being unambiguously hateful, bigoted, as well as being completely unacceptable in this modern era. Zenz also describes homosexuality as one of the four empires of the beast, and goes further to direct his hatred in condemning French philosopher Michel Foucault as a professed homosexual whose writings had a profound impact on the societal acceptance and recognition of homosexuality. Zenz then shows his firm opposition to what he describes as a normalization of pro-LGBT views within Europe, arguing that the continent is becoming intolerant to biblical Christianity. Zenz also professes his explicit opposition to laws which prohibit discrimination against LGBT people as well as hate crimes. He offers support for those that have been arrested for preaching in public against homosexuality. So it would seem that in his view we should all follow his extreme views on Christianity or face the consequences of an eternity in hell. I know which route I would prefer to follow, although Adrian Zenz might not approve. It is clear that Adrian Zenz is not an expert on China, as he would like many to believe. He just writes articles that promote any anti-China sentiment backed by the USA, with not a shred of justifiable evidence to back up his claims. If he was true to his words quoted throughout his religious beliefs, then surely Adrian Zenz should be directing his anger or hatred not at China, but at all those people in the world who do not share his religious ideology. If you have enjoyed watching this video and it has shown you a little detail of life here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching, and make sure you click on the link to the next video.